Well, this Kodak Retina IIa has come to me for servicing, and its number one headline problem is that the film advance doesn't work. It's absolutely locked solid. Now when I look at it, the frame counter doesn't seem to be sitting correctly on the top, and I suspect that it's been misassembled. So I'm going to find out. Remove the screw, remove the top. I'm looking here at the pawl. It's intact, but I'm by no means confident that that's any good. Now there's no tension to speak of on that advance, which suggests that it's got deeper problems. So I'll take the top off the camera, and that's loose. So the rewind knob was loose. The collar that sits on here is missing. So it's definitely been taken apart by someone and misassembled. Let's lift the top off, see what we've got. Okay, so I'm looking at the film advance here. The component here is missing. The latch that operates the film advance is completely missing, and its return spring, no doubt. So we have about multiple pieces missing. A screw is missing here. It has no rack. It can't possibly have cocked the shutter. So I'd say this could be a fairly entertaining camera to service. I won't step you through the entire process, but I'll strip it down, make note of what's missing as I find it, and make a list of what needs to be replaced. Well, I've taken a few pieces off. Now this little piece here, this little ratchet, is to stop the advance mechanism from being able to back up. That's missing its return spring. So we're missing a few more components, and the mystery deepens. Well, I'm just going to peel the leather off the base of the camera. I notice it's loose here. That's over the hinge pin for the front door. So I suspect that's been lifted up for some reason. I don't know whether that means that the screw has worked out and come loose and got lost, or whether someone's peeled the leather back in an attempt to remove the door. The leather's quite bumpy here, there's ice bumps. But the leather itself is in good condition. You can see there's ice bumps here. There's the build-up of the green waxy rubbish, which is a corrosion product. It doesn't look like anyone's had these other screws loose, but the hinge screw here at the base is noticeably free from any glue, and that probably means that it's been unscrewed. Normally I would expect that, and there's a little scratch over the top of it. I suspect someone did peel that leather back in order to get to that screw. and the screw is fairly loose. We'll remove the one from the top as well. I'm looking for, normally you would find spacer washers either at the top or bottom or both. There were none in this case. Normally the door would be a fairly neat fit on the bracket here, on the front standard, and this one is obviously loose and rattly, which means that the arms are slightly bent and it lacks the paper washers which normally sit here and provide some friction. That pin looks a little bit chewed off, like someone's filed at it or worn it out in some funny way. Make sure there's nothing loose there. Right, well, I'll continue on. Well, I'm still working my way through this camera. I've got it completely stripped down. Most of the components are in the cleaner. I've peeled back the leather and got rid of Zeiss bumps from various places, peeled the leather off the front there, and that'll all be cleaned up and glued back in due course. I've serviced the shutter. I didn't find anything unusual in the shutter except the front lens component. When I went to unscrew that, it came apart. The front lens component is screwed together and held together with two tiny lock screws from the back, and it just all came unscrewed, so I had to clean and reassemble that. That's not especially uncommon. Here I start working on cleaning the rangefinder, and when I removed the screw here that holds the arm on in place and removed the washer, my spring washer was missing. And when I lifted the arm, there it was, tucked underneath. So somebody had assembled this rangefinder with the spring between the arm and the body of the rangefinder, which is not the approved method at all. So the mysteries continue. I'll let you know when I find out more. Well, this is the component count for the parts that I've got to replace that were missing on this Retina IIa. Most noticeably perhaps is the cocking rack. That just wasn't present. Here we have the lock lever. That's job is to work on the film advance basically. It provides the ratchet action for the forward swing of the film advance lever, and when it gets to the end of the travel it reverses and allows that the advance lever to return to the rest position. When you press the shutter, this shifts downwards between positions on the ratchet to allow you to advance the film for the next shot. That was missing. This is the coil spring. That was the coil spring for this lever. That was missing. Here is the return spring and its retaining screw that keep this lever in contact with the cam on the film advance at all times. Both of those components were missing. This component here, this is just a screw post with a spring on it, and it's a bit hard to see the spring perhaps, but it's got a fine spring. Now that spring's job is to make sure that the film advance can only rotate in one direction and the film cannot pull back into the cartridge under normal circumstances. That spring was missing. It's very awkward to get that spring off the post, so I'm just going to swap the whole post with a new spring into it. One more retaining screw that was for the also held down the rack, the bracket that holds the rack. That was just missing completely. And finally we have the collar that sits on top of the film rewind shaft underneath the rewind knob. That was missing completely. So that's a bit of a fairly large component count for missing pieces, and I certainly wouldn't expect to encounter that with many cameras. Hopefully now with these pieces, the rest of the reinstall of components after they've been cleaned has gone very smoothly. I've got my shutter serviced, the rangefinder serviced. I mentioned there was a spring washer out of place on that. And now I'm into the last bits of the film advance mechanism and then getting the rangefinder and shutter back in the body. So hopefully with all these new components, that part of the job will go smoothly. Okay, well, I got the camera reassembled with no further drama. So apart from the shopping list of missing parts that needed to be replaced, it was just a fairly simple service. Zeiss bumps are gone from the back. Zeiss bumper's gone from the front here, that very noticeable one. Strangely enough, there wasn't really a matching one on the other side. You quite commonly get them by the strap lugs. The frame counter does work, so the frame counter spring or pull was, well, I thought it looked vaguely suspect. It's certainly up to the job, and I'm not in a hurry to replace it. So I think that camera can go back. So that's one Retina IIa ready to go back, and this one will be going back to Austria. Thanks for watching.